cross, bro. You are the master of illusion. Lying is your trademark. And you have lied so much to me. Lied about the world, lied about me. That you have ended by imposing on me an image of myself. Underdeveloped. You brand me inferior. That's the way you have forced me to see myself. I detest that image. What's more, it's a lie. But now I know you old cancer. And I know myself as well. Hello everyone, welcome to the Caliban Guide. Before we get everything started, if y'all could like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, the whole YouTube slander, I would greatly appreciate it. Because of y'all doing all of this on the Vauban Guide, a lot of the correct information for Vauban is finally out there. But with all that out of the way, let's get this guide started. Caliban is a Warframe that hasn't received much love lately. He has plenty of creators supporting him, but one thing I noticed about Caliban the most is the lack of understanding him. Personally, I think Caliban deserves a bit more attention to what he can bring to the table, especially with the shield changes and mod changes we have had. But I also feel that people don't understand how Caliban's theme is actually there for him. A lot of people say that his kit doesn't have anything to do with adaptation other than his passive, but I personally think that assumption is wrong. Being a sentient Warframe, it's easy to understand how this can be overlooked or misinterpreted, but there's also a lot of factors that come into play for this. He has a grindy farm to acquire, his abilities don't make the most sense on paper, and there's also a lot of slander. All of this makes sense as to why he is the least used Warframe. Additionally, Tactical Potato's worst Warframe video doesn't help either. But why did I choose Caliban when others gave him a quick build, compared him to other Warframes, and have forgotten him? Well, that's because I see potential in Caliban. I can clearly see his theme of adaptation, and I also see how strong of a Warframe he is. But this also means I am treading on new ground. The information out there for Caliban is missing, staggered, or misrepresented. As unique and confusing as Caliban is, I find him to be a puzzle worth solving, and hopefully, with everything I've learned about Caliban, maybe I can pave the way for someone else to find something amazing with him. Even if Caliban still ends up being in the same position, I want to make sure there's something out there for people to find that isn't just comparing Caliban to other Warframes and calling him not worthwhile. Eventually, all of us will acquire Caliban, whether we focus on it or get him by accident. I personally have a soft spot for abominations that get mistreated, so let me show, tell, and teach all of you everything I have learned about Caliban. To get this all started, I will be going over his passive and abilities with some tips and tricks along the way. I hope y'all are ready to learn something new, because I have learned a lot about Caliban. Caliban's passive actually has a name. It's called Adaptive Armor. It functions almost like adaptation with a couple tweaks here and there. But let me explain adaptation first. Adaptation is a mod that you can get once you unlock arbitrations. How it works is when you are being attacked by an enemy, it calculates the highest damage type that enemy is dealing and gives you a resistance buff of up to 90% for a set duration. Once that duration expires, the resistance is gone and you have to restack it fully. Adaptation also does not work with adaptive armor. basically making it to where you have no passive. Now, adaptive armor, on the other hand, only stacks up to 50%, and you can only gain stacks from taking direct damage. So no blocking, no going invincible, and dots don't stack up the damage either. When you stop taking damage of a specific damage type, after 5 seconds, it will start to decay by 2% every second. This, in theory, allows you to keep multiple resistances up for longer. Also, this passive is given to any teammates, companions, and allies within affinity range for free. Additionally, because of the shield changes we have had, shields now block 50% of incoming damage. So, with Caliban's passive, with a specified damage type, you can block 75% of that damage type for free. Plenty of people devalue this passive just because it's a different version of adaptation. Caliban's first ability is Razor Gyre. Razor Gyre is a channeled ability that once activated, it sets you into a spin state. You deal slash damage to any enemies in a specific range around you with a 10% chance of slash procs. You also heal a set amount of health for each enemy hit. It also requires line of sight to hit, and when in this state, you are also immune to knockdowns. While the ability is being channeled, you are slowly draining your own energy and unable to pick up any loot items while it is active. The mechanics of the ability are interesting. As long as you are targeting an enemy, you are able to launch yourself towards an enemy by pressing the fire button, also knocking down anyone in close proximity in the process. Additionally, when you are not targeting an enemy, you can hold down the fire button to increase the damage the ability does, along with increasing the amount of drain it does. This also increases the damage you deal to enemies you launch yourself towards. You can also cast your second ability 50% faster while in this state, but you can't cast your third or fourth ability. Now, this ability is not good in Steel Path. It can primarily be used as a mobility tool, but it's probably not worthwhile to do in Steel Path. However, in all other difficulties in the game, this ability can destroy hordes of enemies. I don't know if you all remember the old days of Ember's World on Fire, but it's basically the same thing. It makes exterminates a breeze in lower levels without much effort. Also, there is currently no augment available for this ability, and Razor Gyre is my preferred choice when swapping it out for abilities in the helmet system. Caliban's second ability is Sentient Wrath. I hope y'all are paying attention because I'm about to show y'all how good this ability actually is. Sentient Wrath, when casted, forces Caliban to do a stomp animation. This means that whenever you are in the air, you will be forced to come down to the ground to complete the cast. Once casted, Caliban sends out multiple projectiles around him that go through walls. When an enemy comes in contact with a projectile, two things happen. First, they get the lifted status. This status effect is only available on specific Warframe abilities and melee weapons. When affected, the enemy will be floating as if they're in zero gravity until the end of the duration. You can break this effect early with any form of damage, with exception of certain Warframe abilities and melee attacks. Second, they get damage vulnerability. The game doesn't tell you what kind of damage it's giving you, but you get a multiplicative addition to your final damage number. This means when you do 1,000,000 damage with a gun, you are dealing 1,350,000 damage with the damage vulnerability. Additionally, when the lifted status is taken away, the damage vulnerability remains for the rest of the duration. Also, be aware of how Eximus units are affected by this. They do not get the lifted status, but they take on the damage vulnerability. This also increases the damage you deal to Overguard. Now, for the part that everyone is confused about, why does this ability have an enemy cap? When casting Sentient Wrath, the ability calculates how many enemies are in range and then gives each of those enemies their own homing projectile. This, I believe, changes the value of the ability significantly. You have homing CC damage vulnerability projectiles that can go through walls. So all those walls you see just going around you with nothing to hit, those are extras. They haven't been given a target and are just trying to hit anything that's in the way. Additionally, the ability is recastable, but you have to wait until the walls have disappeared or got to their targets. This does not get rid of any damage vulnerability currently on enemies when recasted. Also, how long the walls stay out is not based on duration, but based on range. There is also no augment mod for this ability currently. I was really blown away whenever I discovered that the projectiles were homing. And I think this really brings the value of the ability up even higher. But not only that, it increases the value for other Warframes as well, because Sentient Wrath is the ability the Helmet takes from Caliban to give to other Warframes. This means you can give other Warframes homing CC damage vulnerability projectiles as well. Caliban's third ability is Lethal Progeny. This ability serves as Caliban's primary survival tool, along with his passive. When casting the ability, you summon a Conculist to fight alongside you. You can summon up to 3 of them, each of them with their own timer, and you can only see the timer of the last one you casted. You can't recast the ability until the Conculists die or their timers run out. While the Conculist is out on the field, you will be given a shield regen buff that stacks additively with each Conculist out on the field. You can only benefit from the shield regen so long as you have shields. If you don't have shields, you have to gain back shields from mods or wait for your shields to start regenning again. When initially casting, the Conculist will focus on doing a spin move to the first enemy it gets next to. The reason they do this is because they have the same aggro values that a Warframe has, making them walking taunt totems, so make sure you are near your Conculist to help mitigate damage to you. They also have all the passives that regular Conculist enemies have as well. This means they have a form of health gating at specific health intervals of 80, 65, 45, and 25%. When this health gating is triggered, they gain an adaptation to whatever damage type they are taking. Each adaptation they gain also changes the value of the resistances. One adaptation is 90%, 2 is 80, 3 is 75, and 4 is 70. This allows them to be around for longer. Sadly, their level doesn't scale with the enemies, it scales with your power strength, but their health scaling is 1-to-1 with the actual Conculist enemies. Additionally, the Conculist can be treated like Warframes. What I mean by this is they take on Warframe buffs and weapon buffs. The list is massive on how many they can take, but a short list of what they can take is Nourish, Shock Trooper, Smite Infusion, Wisp Motes, and so on and so forth. They are able to adapt with whatever teammates you currently have that are giving buffs. They are also able to hit nullifier bubbles, but they don't target them, so you shouldn't rely on them for popping nullifier bubbles. Also, whenever a Conculist does enter a nullifier bubble, they have their health drained in chunks and constantly stagger until they die. And whenever you enter a nullifier bubble, you don't get the benefits of the shield regen. Additionally, they will follow you around when there are no enemies in range and teleport to you once you are 40 meters away from them, meaning they will stay with you no matter what. There is also no augment currently available for this ability, and make sure you color your Conculists appropriately as well. You can accidentally aggro your own teammates. Caliban's fourth ability is Fusion Strike. This is by far the best ability in Caliban's kit. When casting Fusion Strike, Caliban is rooted in place and begins to emit 3 beams. The beams are then all brought together to cause an implosion that deals blast damage. It also forces all enemies to ragdoll and be slightly vacuumed towards its center. After the implosion, an aura is left behind that will strip defenses off of enemies whenever they are caught in the implosion or entering the aura. This strips both shields and armor. Additionally, you can have 2 of these auras out on the field at the same time. Recasting a new one gets rid of the first one. Enemies that have already had their defenses stripped once by an aura cannot be stripped by the same aura again when they re-enter it. You would need to cast Fusion Strike an additional time to get 100% strip, or have 2 auras on top of each other for a full strip. This makes Caliban have something other Warframes also have, a stat requirement. Caliban needs one of 2 things, either 200% power strength to guarantee 100% defense strip, or 165% power strength with corrosive projection for 100% armor strip only. Shields are also kind of finicky to get rid of with Fusion Strike. You only really benefit off of shield strip when you're at 100% defense strip, since shields can regen on their own almost immediately. Additionally, if there is a shield drone present in the group of enemies, enemies will begin to regain their shields immediately, so aim for those shield drones first. Now, for the interesting part of the ability, the shape of it. The shape of the aura is like a dome or an onion with a specified contact point. The ability will always be pointed upwards, no matter where you land the ability. So this means any enemies below the point of contact will have to get really close to the aura to be able to take on the effects of the defense strip. So always aim for the lowest point possible when hitting a group of enemies. You can also retarget this ability super quick, so you don't have to commit to where it's landing. This ability makes Caliban anti-everything, taking away any adaptation enemies have against you. You can also combo Fusion Strike with your second ability. Just stomp first and then aim at the biggest mass of enemies to bring them all back down to the ground. They will be slowly getting up, ready to die. The aura is also anti-nullifier. Whenever nullifiers walk over the aura, they can't get rid of it. Additionally, they also can't get rid of the defense strip enemies already have on them. There is also no augment currently available for this ability. Some things to make note of about Caliban's abilities is that you're able to cast his one while bullet jumping, so this gives you a bit of momentum on your initial cast. Same thing goes for your third and fourth abilities. You can bullet jump and aim glide while casting these abilities to keep your momentum going at the same time. This allows you to keep your much needed movement to stay alive and active. Additionally, you can wall latch and cast your fourth ability as well. Now, with all the abilities and everything on the table, how does Caliban's kit fit with his theme of being a sentient and adaptation? Well, let's look at sentience in general. They are biological machines capable of self-replication, reconstruction, and thought. This could, in theory, be considered as true AI. They were made for the purpose of traveling to different galaxies to terraform and change the environment to be suitable for their Orcan masters. Now, what does it take to terraform an entire galaxy? What happens when you need to eradicate something that already lives there? Bringing weapons of a specific kind only brings in the assumption that they would be effective against whatever lives there. So, you need to think more mundane, more broadly, not necessarily outside of the box, but covering every area you can. This act of mundane destruction, with no care of whether the beings are covered in armor, shields, organic parasites, or robotic technology, you have to be effective against all these options, which brings me all the way back to Caliban, Era's own creation, and the first Warframe that wasn't made by Ballas. Caliban's biggest strength is the fact that he's mundane. Every faction in the game can be taken on by Caliban easily. Because of this, I think Caliban's kit is so cleverly themed around sentience. Being able to wield the power of the sentience, a force capable of taking on galaxies and eradicating anything in their path, is pretty cool. Also, his active playstyle is something I personally enjoy. Caliban is not easy to play. There are some issues with his kit that I think do need to be looked at, but as he currently stands right now, this debuffing support Warframe should be considered in some aspects when in a team. He can be fun to play, but my personal fun from Caliban comes from finding builds for him. But before we get into the builds, let's talk about getting Caliban. He is exclusively a late game frame, meaning there is no way to farm for him before completing the new war, which, when you do, you get access to the armor bounties that drop his pieces and materials for him. The only way to get him before late game is buying him from the marketplace or having him gifted to you. I do not recommend doing this. Caliban really begins to shine in the late game when you have a few helmets available. But I do have an early game build and a mid game build in case you'll somehow end up with him before the new war. So, to start us off, let's take a look at the early game build. Do ignore the polarities on my Caliban at the moment. Caliban comes with a dash polarity on his aura slot, so corrosive projection, energy siphon are top recommendations, but any dash polarity will work just fine. Caliban also comes with one D polarity, so not a lot of room to work with. But the good thing about the early game and mid game builds is you will always have a catalyst available on him, since you have to buy him from the store. So you can put more mods on the normal on a no forma build. Do make note though, Equilibrium is rank 4. It will only be half as effective, but still give you much needed energy. And honestly, Caliban is a monster in the early game. You can easily go through any content no problem. Reason being, you get adaptation early, You have constant shield regen. Your 1 kills anything. You can basically armor strip when you double cast on an enemy. It's just good. Just about any content in the early game can easily be one-shot with Caliban. Now, let's move on to the mid-game build. You finally have enough resources to get Caliban to his stat requirement. Well, almost. You have enough power strength in this build to get you up to 100% armor strip with corrosive projection, so shields are still going to be an issue. You will need 1 additional forma for this build as well. I recommend a V polarity. That should be all you need for this. And with finally reaching the benchmark of 100% armor strip, you can initiate fights with Eximus units in a group and force a 1v1 with them. Additionally, with proper access to the Augur set mods, you can now regain shields from casting abilities, giving you a quick way to start that shield regen again. Either on your frame, your secondary weapon, or your companion weapon can work for this. Everything else is still the same. Basically, you can just kind of one-shot everything, increase the damage, and you're a walking invincible Warframe in the mid-game. You have free adaptation. Even though it's not 100% the adaptation mod, the passive is still powerful enough to keep you alive in mid-game content. And honestly, Caliban has a very unique way of modding him as well. Just like how Vauban can be modded for any stat requirement you need for a specific game mode, such as more range, more duration, more power strength, Caliban can be modded defensively in any way possible. You can either go hybrid tank, shield tank, catalyzing shields, full health tank. Caliban really doesn't care about what defensive mods you give him, and it's scary, because I wish I had a proper recommendation for how to mod him defensively, but he really takes anything. There really isn't one way to go defensively with Caliban, because this kind of also ties into his theme of adaptation. You mod him for what's needed. Going for long survival, you can either go a hybrid tank, a shield tank, or a health tank. You're going all the way to level cap, do a shield gate build. You're fighting against infested, health tank. It's honestly quite impressive how many options Caliban can go just because you have an extra mod slot without needing adaptation. Though, putting adaptation on him is still an option. Now before we get into the good part of the late game builds, I have a few things I want to make note of. 1. Hello everyone. I'm Professor Dystopia, and I'm addicted to Prime Sure-Footed. It's really good, and well worth using if you have access to it. But don't forget you have options. Regular Sure-Footed with Fortitude can give you the same benefit, but also this works out better for Caliban because he loves shield regen. Don't forget about Handspring as well, a classic in dealing with CC and still effective to this day. But also we have Unairo. The Poise passive can give you immunity to CC for 40 seconds with just pressing a button twice. Number 2, I have all the mods maxed out. Don't worry about this, you will get there in time. We have hundreds of ways to farm up Endo now, including the Narmer bounties. You can also use regular versions of these mods as well. Just remember, these are guidelines for you to follow and use however you want. Number 3, forma your Caliban how you want to. I have this format here that I recommend for all the builds I'm going to show you. I have an aura forma on Caliban as well, but I will be making note if you need less or more forma for any of these builds for min-max purposes. Number 4, for Archon shards, I highly recommend 1 red for power strength and 2 yellow for casting speed. You can also do Materai for both of these, but I like to play my frames with less button management. On the other 2 slots, you can put whatever you want. I highly recommend 2 reds for duration since the stat requirements for Caliban is a bit restricting for duration. Number 5, I'm not kidding when I say that you can mod Caliban defensively however you want. In all these builds I'm going to show you, I'm going to have different options that you can see of how you can mod him defensively. None of these are set in stone. You can put on whatever you want. Whether you want more comfort or you're going for an active playstyle, you really can go with whatever you want. With all that done, let's start talking about the late game builds. But before we get into the core of the late game builds, I have this special build here for y'all. This is what I'd like to call a trial build for Caliban. This requires no forma and no catalyst, and it has everything Caliban needs, even with no Archon shards. Also make note, Precision Intensify is a new mod and only available in the late game, but you can buy it on Warframe.market for 10 platinum. It's surprisingly cheap. Now, I know a lot of you are probably still on the fence for trying out Caliban, so I came up with this build for y'all to give him a go. and to form your own opinion on him. It will also help you learn his core playstyle, managing your abilities and understanding what helps you stay alive. Make sure to put secondary auger mods on your secondary weapon or your companion weapon to have a fast way to get your shields back. You can also use Materai for the casting speed as well, that way you don't have to put Archon shards on him. But this build is primarily for people that aren't quite sure on investing into Caliban. But I'll ask only this, give this a try at least. It allows you to do any game mode you want with no issues except defense missions alone. And proof of that is the background footage. I did a 30-minute MOT survival test to hard test this build. It worked and it survived. I did die a couple times, but that's because I wasn't paying attention properly. The fact that Caliban could do this with 5 mod slots still open is pretty impressive. The active playstyle that Caliban gives is rewarding, especially when you understand the abilities correctly. And I salute any Caliban mains out there. This frame takes a certain playstyle that isn't easy to grab at first. You could say it's one hell of a skill check. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the proper late game builds. To start us off with the late game builds, here's Blight Summoner. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I did not come up with this build. This is actually the most common build you can find for Caliban, but it's very strong for that exact reason. You have plenty of defensive options to help you stay alive. Nourish along with Equilibrium is your energy sustain and plus additional damage. Since you're able to fully strip enemies, having Viral available to you just makes sense. And on a full energy bar, you can actually summon 3 Conculists, nourish them, and do your ultimate as well, allowing you to keep up a full rotation of your abilities so long as you're killing enemies. And since your Conculists can take nourish, they also do a Viral pulse whenever they take damage. This pulse also gives them aggro, making them better taunt totems than before. And they just deal more damage because you're giving them viral damage. Now, the really weird part of the build is the fact that combat discipline is on here. Now, you can thank an Asian Plays for this because he has a whole video about how this combo works with acid shells, but I'll give you a quick explanation. Whenever you kill something with the Sobek, the following interaction happens. Combat discipline hits you, causing a viral pulse to go out, priming all enemies with viral, and then acid shells explodes the damage. But the really cool thing is that acid shells isn't the only mod that benefits off of this as well. There's a lot of other death effect mods that other weapons have that Caliban can actually use and benefit off of very effectively. Also, auger mods are also something you want on Caliban at all times. Whether it's on your frame, your secondary weapon, or your companion weapon, it's just useful to have. Casting an ability starts the shield regen almost immediately, but with Fast Deflection and Vigilante Vigor on here, you really don't have to worry about having them on in general. It's just a nice addition to have whenever you're in an emergency situation. And this build is probably the strongest build out of all the choices. Now for the second build here, I have Thunderstruck. By the way, thank you for the correction of Tesla Bank and the Vauban guide. With the new information, this build is a lot stronger. So, Thunderstruck is a build that relies on catalyzing shields to survive. The really cool thing is that you don't have to worry about getting max shields immediately with every cast of your abilities. Your Conculus shield regen will just give you it very quickly. Additionally, Vigilante Vigor and Fast Deflection are here to help as well. The build is very comfy with this, but they are also not 100% needed. You can put whatever you want there. You get a lot of freedom to put in Rolling Guard, Arcane Aegis, the whole 9 yards, whatever you want. But Caliban is also one of the few Warframes that can effectively use Tesla Bank. The fact that you are capable of 100% defense stripping means that whenever you cast your 4th ability on a group of enemies affected by Tesla Nervos, most of the time, they'll just die, since the damage that Tesla Bank gives you is based off of enemies' health percentage. Every now and then, most of the time, the only thing that will be left standing is either a heavy unit with very little health or an Eximus unit all by himself because you killed the group he was walking with. Additionally, you also have Archon Stretch here to help give you some energy restoration with Tesla Nervos, which is a really good combo. And with Equilibrium with you, you have very good energy sustain. I personally like Arcane Blessing on there just to give me a little bit more extra leeway. That way, if my shields don't regen fast enough or I'm not paying attention, I don't immediately get tossed to the ground. Mult Augmented is also swappable, but the extra power strength helps a lot with the shield regen your Conculus give you. Do make note though, this build doesn't have as much duration as the other builds, so you'll have to pay a little bit more attention with your timers. But most of the time, you're going to be looking for enemies that are currently being shocked by your Tesla Nervos. You turn into a heat-seeking missile, basically, because your brain tells you, oh, there's a group over there. I should go kill them, because Tesla Bank just deals so much damage, and it scales with enemy level. So this build is a fairly comfortable and chill build to play Caliban with, and additionally, your playstyle slightly adapts to that of Vauban's. For the third build, I have Domain Expansion. This build focuses on range heavily, and also, you get to have the right amount of power strength that you need for Fusion Strike once you have Malt augmented fully stacked. Now, the main focus of this build is support, heavy support. You have Dispensary for health, energy, and ammo for you and your team, and with the amount of range you have, you can pretty much debuff large portions of the map. I personally take this build whenever I'm playing with a full squad of teammates and we're planning on doing a quick survival of sorts, or just want to play Caliban in a more supportive role. Because most of the time, a lot of other Warframes out there will be dealing a lot more damage. So if you can make the process of killing enemies even faster, because the enemies are already fully defense stripped, or having more damage vulnerability on them, you can kind of just sit and chill and be probably one of the best support units in the game. This build also works surprisingly well with Korra, because your Fusion Strike can cover the entire Strangle Dome, and your second ability has homing projectiles, so any enemies that are caught on the Strangle Dome, you can give them damage vulnerability, which allows Korra to whip claw them even faster. Also, your playstyle slightly adapts to that of Proteus, because when you're moving around a lot and casting your Fusion Strike all over the place, you're kind of casting your Dispensary along with you all the time as well for energy sustain. Here's the fourth build, and probably the second strongest build out of the bunch. Thermodynamics. Caliban is one of the few frames that can use Thermal Sunder as a proper DPS killing tool. And the reason for this is you have damage vulnerability you can give and 100% defense strip. You kill crowds like it's nothing. I personally don't know how to use Thermal Sunder properly, because most of the time I just don't use it. But spamming fire, along with having Archon Vitality, you're just constantly slapping on fire procs on enemies and just dealing a shit ton of dot damage. Now you also have Archon Flow as well, because every now and then you might kill something with cold. So having an extra method of getting more energy to keep you going is pretty nice. The energy sustain in this build as well is really easy to handle. Don't get too trigger happy though. Sometimes when you're not paying attention, you might accidentally spend all your energy because you're having a little bit too much fun killing all the hordes. Heavy units may be a slight struggle, depending on how much you're spreading around your fire, but Eximus units will need to be taken care of manually. That Overguard is fairly strong for them to have, but the free movement you have around to be able to find hordes of enemies, zone in on them, cast Fusion Strike on them, and then just start spamming Thermal Sunder on them until they die is actually kind of satisfying to do. You really do kill waves of enemies like it's nothing. You melt them like butter, and it's actually a really fun build to play at the same time. The whole area is on fire all the time, and even with Thermal Sunder being in a nerf state in the helmet system, Caliban can use it so effectively, and your gameplay style adapts to that of Gauss. This is the final build I have to show you all. Death Horizon. I have Coil Horizon on here to give Caliban a good grouping ability to help him take advantage of Fusion Strike's defense strip more effectively. Most of the time, enemies are kind of just standing outside of the aura, so they're not going to be affected by the defense strip, so you just throw a Coil Horizon at them and bring them into you. That way, you don't have to run around and continuously keep casting Fusion Strike, and you have a good way to keep your energy sustained with Archon Stretch. You also have Equilibrium helping out with that as well. The energy sustain is very easy to keep going. Coil Horizon is also probably the better grouping tool to go with, since it's a full 360 degree grab, and it's faster. Also, it combos really well with your second ability. The damage from it gets rid of the lifted status enemies have. So you could, in theory, do a combo of your second ability, Coil Horizon, then Fusion Strike the enemies. You now have enemies that have damage vulnerability, are on the ground, and are fully defense stripped. Anything can kill them at that point. It's also probably the better build to take in defensive type missions too, because it's a form of crowd control that Caliban kind of needs as well. It's also kind of just fun to play. I find that this build can also be changed into a shield gate build fairly easily, and it's probably the better version of playing this build as well. But you could play this as a supportive role too, since its massive amount of range it has works really well at covering massive areas that you need to cover. And additionally, your gameplay style adapts to that of Gyre's, which is pretty cool. But that's all the builds I'm willing to show you. I want y'all to go and mess with Caliban as well. He can take just about any Helminth ability and have a fairly unique build and playstyle around it. The amount of options he has available to him are staggering, and a lot to handle at once. He's able to be molded and changed to however you want, and he can become whatever playstyle you want as well. So here's a hint at a few other abilities that I didn't show but have tested and have made worthwhile builds that actually function well. So I leave it up to y'all to investigate and see how you can mod Caliban to make these abilities work with him. But with all that said and all the builds done, let's go ahead and go over a bit of a review and some gameplay tips for Caliban. Now, when modding out Caliban defensively, you can do whatever you want. You can go hybrid tank, shield gate. It's just really up to you and what you're going to go and fight against. The fact that you have a mini adaptation gives you a free mod slot on Caliban, but adaptation is still an option. It does help him out a lot. It only makes it to where your passive doesn't benefit you. It's still able to go and help out every other of your teammates and companions. It helps keep them alive for longer. Your first ability may not be good in Seal Path, but it deals good damage in early and mid game. It allows you to make exterminates a breeze and just go straight through them like nothing. And Sentient Wrath is a solid ability. Quick, easy CC, giving you a second to breathe, helping your shields recharge a little bit. It also allows you to make Eximus units and elite enemy units primed to get killed, especially along with Fusion Strike. 100% defense stripping them and giving them additional damage to take is crazy good, especially since you will be dealing more damage to Overguard. Not a lot of Warframes are capable of increasing damage that you deal to Overguard. Also, stick around your Conculus. They're your primary survival tool, and they have the same aggro level as Warframes. They will keep enemies' attention on them, and they will also become nodes for groups of enemies. Since they can take a lot of hits, they'll just have a lot of enemies surrounding them at the same time. So you can go over there and kill a bunch of enemies and let your Conculus go and seek out more. Also, sticking behind your Conculus is the better choice. They're walls for you. They take the damage. The shield regen is there to help you mitigate the damage that you will be taking. It's not there to primarily keep you alive all the time. It's just there to help you for whenever mistakes or errors happen. And your fourth ability is really strong. Just any group of enemy you aim that at, they're going to go ahead and die. The knockdown ragdoll is also a really strong way of just CCing a group of enemies very quickly, giving you additional time to breathe as well. And with the leftover aura, enemies walking in, they're just going to be stripped for free. The same goes with acolytes, because when they spawn in your aura, they're going to be immediately stripped. It's really strong. Caliban also is more effective in a team because your passive helps. You're not going to be paying attention to all the enemies, so having free random enemies around, fully defense stripped, and given damage vulnerability helps your team out. The lifted status can be kind of annoying for single target weapons and such, so explosive weapons and chain link weapons are highly recommended for Caliban. And your second and fourth ability can combo. Run into a group of enemies, stomp, cause them all to get lifted, fusion strike directly onto the ground, they all slam down and they're ready to get killed by anything you fire at them. Also, learning how to survive with Caliban carries over very well to other Warframes, because your survivability tools are more reliant on you paying attention and being aware of your surroundings. This helps you learn how to survive better with other Warframes as well, and giving Caliban other Helminth abilities drastically changes his playstyle, because he adapts to the playstyle of that Warframe very slightly. The fact that his second, third, and fourth abilities are mundane, when you throw something unique into the mix, the abilities suddenly start doing a lot better. This doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad on their own, they're still very strong on their own. Just tossing in another Warframe's ability into the mix changes Caliban's playstyle to act almost similar to that Warframe and makes him very fun to play. It's pretty cool when you realize what is happening when you're adapting your playstyle to another Warframe with Caliban. Oh my god, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you all so much for watching. This video took quite a lot more effort than I thought it would, honestly. There's a lot to know about Caliban. So, to start things off, here's the fashion frame for Caliban. And if y'all could leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, the whole YouTube jargon, it would be greatly appreciated. To be honest, I do hope people look at Caliban in a different light at least. And I hope this helps people look at Warframes in a different aspect as well. Because for a Warframe to be made, they have to find the theme and understand the theme before they build it. Caliban is a good example of that more than anything else. A lot of people didn't quite understand how he fit as a sentient and how he fit into adaptation. A lot of people just kind of looked in the aspect of gameplay, but didn't look in the aspect of story. Also, Caliban's just a prime example of life imitating art. Because Shakespeare's The Tempest, like, it's not even funny how the hatred for Caliban the Warframe is fairly similar to Caliban the character in The Tempest. But that's always the neat part. Figuring out things, discovering things, and just learning new things at the same time. And I'm glad that there's a lot of other content creators out there as well supporting Caliban. It's good to see. Sadly, he's not played so much, but there's a solid reason for that, and that's because his farm is kind of a pain, which is understandable. Hell, I don't even have his Helminth, but soon enough, I will get his Helminth. In time. There's no rush for it. That's always the great part about Warframe, is that you can take your time in whatever you want to do, because the content is going to stay there, no matter what. It might get changed, updated, worked around, or fixed, and, you know, that's always a great thing to happen. Especially with, you know, Fortuna changes happening and all that stuff. A lot of new players don't have to experience that pain anymore. And you know what? Speaking of changes, the Inaros rework is happening. That's awesome. I'm actually really excited for that. We had Hydroid and now we have Inaros. I'm honestly wondering who's going to get the next update. It'll probably be some time till that happens though. There's a lot of big stuff coming. And honestly, I'm excited for it too. So might be a bit till you see another video from me once that update comes out. But I'll make sure to post some build videos here and there for y'all. And I'll be working on my next guide on the side as well. I won't be hard focusing like I did for this one. I almost burnt myself out making this guide, but luckily Helldivers 2 came out, and that's been a really fun game. But regardless, for the next guide, I also want y'all's opinion on who it should be. And I'm stuck between two choices. Either my second favorite Warframe, Valkyr, or the least played Prime, which is Banshee. In the end, the decision will be mine, but I'd like to see what y'all's opinion is and seeing which frame y'all would like to see have a guide next. Also, I want to inform y'all, I'm currently working on a Discord server, so that'll come in time. Learning a lot of new things with Discord. It'll be some time till that actually comes out. But other than that, you know, remember to have fun. Remember to enjoy the game, take breaks, drink water, you know, go breathe some fresh air after doing a 2-hour survival session. You know, just enjoy the game. Have fun, because that's really all that needs to happen. You don't need to be meta. You don't need to force yourself to be the best player in the game. Warframe is a fun, good game with a good community and with good people. So thank you all for watching. It's really appreciated. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will catch you all next time.